Jenny here, Halstead Ceramics. Welcome to my YouTube channel where we're going to talk all things pottery and sometimes get my opinion. Today we're going to talk about the reclaim process. Reclaiming your clay to use again. You're rescuing your clay. It's wonderful. There are fairly easy steps to take, and I've perfected this over time. And just like with your glazes, everything else, take notes about what works, what doesn't work. But ultimately, this process I came up with after following a lot of other people's instructions and kind of getting down the process to what works for me, my studio, the size, the teeny tiny size of my studio, the materials that I have available to me, and yes, it still works and it's awesome. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is get your trimmings, all of your clay, completely bone dry. Now, the reason that you want it bone dry is that when you reconstitute it, it all needs to be the exact same consistency. So getting that bone dry clay is step number one. The next thing that you're going to do is, with one of 4 buckets with a lid, you're going to take this bucket and you're going to fill it like 3/4 of the way with water. And then you're going to take your clay trimmings that are all bone dry and smaller than like half the size of your fist or smaller. You want small pieces. You're going to pour that, you're going to dump that into your bucket of water. Now, really important step here. When you go to dump that in, go ahead and put a respirator on. And I do not mean a cloth mask that you're wearing because of the pandemic. I'm talking about a respirator, because you do not want the dust that's going to kick up into your lungs. Now, if you go so far as to pound out that clay, which some people recommend in this process, I've done it. I've tried both ways. It makes no difference. But if you're going to go so far as to pound out that clay before you put it into the bucket of water, definitely wear a respirator. Definitely put it inside a sealed bag, so that you pound it out with like a rubber mallet. You are not kicking up that dust. Oh my God, don't do it. So you're gonna dump your bone dry clay into this bucket and you're gonna leave it. You're not gonna touch it, you're not gonna mix it up, you're just gonna let it sit there for a full week. Now, this was hard for me to do, and I learned this the hard way in the beginning because I wanted to go right in there with my fancy drill bit on my drill and just go to town. It's a great drill bit. It's a paint mixer drill bit that you can get at any hardware store. I highly recommend it. You feel like, oh man, I want to go in and start mixing it up. The problem is you want all that clay to just get to the exact same saturation. And the best way to do it is to just leave it. If you start mixing it too soon, you're going to start getting it really clumpy. So just let it sit. I go a full week, let it sit, and then I go in with my mixer and I make sure that it's all saturated. And it really should be the consistency of milkshake by the time you're done mixing it. Now, you might go in and there might be some clumps in there. If it wasn't fully saturated, that's fine. You can break it up more with your fingers, mix it really, really high, and let it sit for another week or so. The moisture content in your area and your environment, like humidity, it can really vary. So I leave a lid on the bucket so nothing's going to fall into it, and it gets saturated. Now, when you go to open that bucket, what's really cool is that top layer of water is going to be like clean. It's so cool how water basically gets filtered through that clay. It's really cool. That's nature. It's science. Oh my goodness. So anyway, when you get that milkshake consistency, you've got no clumps, this is when we go to the next stage. So for this, you actually need 2 buckets, a lid, a pillowcase, and a bungee cord. That sounds like we're going to MacGyver the crap out of it. It's awesome. So bucket number 1, you're going to drill multiple holes in the bottom of it. The lid, you're actually going to cut a hole around the top of it so that it's enough that it can sit on top of the bucket without the holes, and the bucket with the holes sits on top of that. And you've got lots of room. So 2 buckets, a lid, and then holes in it. The next thing I do is I take a pillowcase. So these pillowcases, I usually go to my favorite thrift store, which is Ark Value Village in Richfield, Minnesota. I love them. They're fantastic. I get tools from them. I get all kinds of stuff, but I go and I get pillowcases from them, and they're usually 50 cents to $1 for these pillowcases. And so the pillowcases, I want a high thread count pillowcase, not something that is flannel or got floofy doofies on it. You want a high thread count pillowcase, and you're going to bring it home and you're going to wash it, and then you're going to turn it inside out, because you don't want any extra threads getting into the clay. Turn it inside out, and then you're going to put it over the bucket with the holes in it. As it goes into the bucket, you want to make sure that you leave a good distance between the bottom of the bucket and the bottom of the pillowcase. And the reason being is you don't want the pillowcase resting on the bottom of that bucket, even when it's filled with clay. So leave a lot of room, and this is where that bungee cord is really, really helpful. So the Home Depot bucket that I use is the perfect size to stretch a pillowcase through. It fits great. So that's why I use that particular Home Depot bucket. Then I use the bungee cord to secure it in place so that as I pour my clay mixture in, it doesn't just boom, drop to the bottom. This I leave in the bucket system for about a week. Again, you're going to want to cover this with something. Maybe it's another bucket lid, but cover it so no debris falls in. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take it out of the bucket, and you're then going to put it into a plaster bat. Now the plaster bat that I have is so janky. Like this thing, I love it though. I made it myself, and it's not perfect. It's not the kind of plaster that I would use for pottery, because I don't want bits of it to come off into the clay. So I leave the clay in the pillowcase. I pick it up and then I set it into the plaster bat. And from here, the clay will spread out a bit. I'll flap the pillowcase over and I'll let it sit. Now I leave the bat on top of a plant stand so that the bottom of the bat is free to breathe. The plaster is actually going to draw moisture out of the clay, and by spreading it out like this, we get even more consistency. This I leave for another week or so, and I'll go through every now and then and I'll poke at it to make sure that it's the right consistency. And basically I'm looking for the same exact consistency of brand new clay that I get out of the box and pull it out of the plastic. That is the consistency that I'm looking for. When it gets to that consistency, I pull it out of the bat, I pull it out of the pillowcase, and I wedge up small, medium-sized pieces that I then bag up, and that is my reclaim process. And it feels really good to reuse the clay. And the middle process piece of the bucket in bucket system, I used to not do that. I used to just pour it directly into the pillowcase and then into the plaster bat, and it took twice as long. The thing that I really, really recommend is set a calendar reminder. But once you've poured it into the bucket system, you definitely want to set a calendar reminder for a week, because the worst thing, oh my God, the worst thing is to forget about it and come back like a month later and realize you have a solid brick. Because the only way you're going to reclaim that is to pound it out. And the same thing goes for once you've put it into the plaster bat. Oh my gosh, totally have forgotten about those. That sucks. Oh, that totally sucks. So setting some calendar reminders for yourself, it's really great to reclaim clay, especially if you go through a lot of it and you're using a lot of trimmings. It's just, why throw it away? Like, be nice. this is one of the ways that we can, you don't have to be a jerk to the environment. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love your comments, and if you have questions, certainly let me know, and by all means subscribe to my channel. Have a great day.